week. I'm Yvonne Yong. Coming up, more charges against Myanmar's detained leader Aung San Suu Kyi as the military attempt to quash street protests. A glimmer of hope as the World Health Organization reports a significant drop in reported cases of COVID-19. And a deadly winter storm hits Texas, causing widespread power blackouts as temperatures drop to record lows. International concern is growing over the standoff between the military and demonstrators in Myanmar. The country's leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, has been in detention since the military coup almost 3 weeks ago, and protesters are angry over additional charges laid against her. Southeast Asia correspondent Zoe Ford reports.
The call went out for 1 million people to march to Yangon Centre to demand the release of Aung San Suu Kyi. Tens of thousands are already there. They're angry about another obscure charge being laid against their deposed leader for breaching COVID-19 restrictions, and that her first court hearing was held in secret a day earlier than expected. Even her lawyer wasn't told. He admits he needs some assistance.
Please support us in any advice, any legal advice from anyone, internationally or nationally, locally. Any legal advice is welcomed by the group.
The nation's new rulers have defended their treatment of Ms Suu Kyi by saying she was being kept home for security reasons while the law took its course. They've also tried to justify the use of tear gas, water cannon and rubber bullets to disperse protesters.
We found out that the protesters are inciting the violence and illegally pressuring civil servants. The protesters have become violent rather than peaceful.
Civil disobedience is growing, paralysing some cities. Railway workers are the latest group to join demonstrations. Western countries, including Australia, have called on security forces to refrain from violence and warned the coup leaders the world is watching. Zoe Ford, ABC News.
To some positive news, according to the World Health Organization, daily infections of COVID-19 have plunged around the world, falling around 50% from their January peak. Authorities are now hoping the vaccine will help tame the curve as more contagious variants spread. Casey Briggs reports.
Carnival time in Germany, traditionally a boisterous occasion, but that was the before times. This is now. Off the streets, stuck in their cars. But the world's coming out of its worst COVID wave yet. Here's the global curve going back to the beginning of the pandemic. Case numbers have been steadily dropping now for more than 5 weeks, from an average of more than 750,000 cases a day to less than half that today. Case numbers are now back to where they were in October of last year. That's in large part due to huge improvements in the United States, the biggest contributor to this global curve. But also in Europe, where many countries were plunged into Christmas lockdowns, we've seen a 50% improvement from that peak.
The fire is not out, but we have reduced its size. If we stop fighting it on any front, it will come roaring back.
Public health measures and restrictions got us here, but it's hoped vaccines will continue to put pressure on the curve. In Brazil, doses are now reaching some remote communities, but many poor countries are struggling. The international COVAX program promises some help for developing countries. And vaccines should start to flow soon, with the WHO's emergency approval of the AstraZeneca jab today. COVAX hopes to deliver 336 million doses of vaccines before the middle of the year, growing to 2 billion by year's end. Most of them are earmarked for the poorest countries in the scheme, enough to cover 20% of their population. But that's still a fraction of the 70% coverage the WHO suggests is needed to beat the virus. A long time away for countries like Mozambique, where full vaccination could take 5 years.
A deadly winter storm's causing suffering and misery in the state of Texas. The power grid was overwhelmed as millions of people tried to keep warm in some of the coldest temperatures there in more than 30 years. North America correspondent Catherine Diss reports.
A usually dry, mild Texas shrouded in snow. But what started as a novelty quickly turned deadly. This house went up in flames, the cause unknown, but it's believed the family may have lit a fire to stay warm.
Just incredibly tragic. A young woman, 41 years old, family, children. It just doesn't get worse than that.
The severe weather has now led to the deaths of more than 20 Texans. Nationally, the toll has topped 30.
Pipes are freezing. We don't have enough power to give everyone energy. And so for me, it's been no electricity, no heat, no Wi-Fi for people who think that's important for over 72 hours.
Emergency Department Dr. Salim Razai has worked on the COVID-19 frontline in San Antonio for 12 months. He says hospitals are now being hit with a wave of hypothermia patients.
It's pretty serious. On top of a pandemic, there was just a story of a mother and her 8-month-old that couldn't get warm and went into the garage and turned on their car and died from carbon monoxide.
The Arctic front has also seen the rollout of the coronavirus vaccine grind to a halt in some weather-battered states, with trucks unable to deliver the vials. It's the last thing the country needs. It was already a race against time to vaccinate people before variants of the virus spread out of control. As the ice and snow melts in the south, another front is coming its way. Restoring power remains the biggest challenge for the Lone Star State as households brace for another night of sub-zero temperatures. Catherine Diss, ABC News, Washington.
Japan has been rocked by a powerful quake, which experts say is an aftershock from the 2011 disaster. Just weeks out from the 10-year anniversary of the Fukushima nuclear meltdown, the magnitude 7.3 quake struck the same area. North Asia correspondent Jake Sturmer reports from Tokyo.
It's an aftershock 10 years in the making. The magnitude 7.3 earthquake struck off the coast of Fukushima in northeastern Japan. Hundreds of kilometres away, apartments and office buildings shook in Tokyo. It left nearly 1 million households without power and triggered a landslide that blocked parts of a highway. Inside Fukushima's main train station, water leaked through the overhead lights and flooded the floor. More than 100 people have been injured so far, and officials say it's not over yet.
For about a week after the quake, there'll be aftershocks of more than magnitude 6. So please be on alert.
It's a chilling reminder of the country's worst ever nuclear disaster. A magnitude 9.1 earthquake struck the same stretch of coast almost 10 years ago, triggering a tsunami which hit the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. More than 18,000 people died in the quake and tsunami. Hundreds of thousands lost their homes. Japan's meteorological agency says it considers last night's quake to be an aftershock of the 2011 disaster. The operators of the Fukushima plant say this time no abnormalities have been found at the nuclear facility.
Aftershocks following a large earthquake can continue over a period of many years. Japan is one of the most quake-prone countries in the world, and tremors occur almost every day. It's not uncommon to feel them, especially in tall buildings, which are built to sway.
Officials insist there's no threat of a tsunami, but rattled residents weren't taking any chances. Thousands are in evacuation centres, maintaining social distance and bracing for aftershocks. Jake Sturmer, ABC News, Tokyo.
A group of Russian nationalists is running a propaganda war in Australia, supporting the agenda of President Vladimir Putin. The leader of the group has told the ABC's Four Corners program its mission is to counter what he calls anti-Russian bias in the West. Intelligence and security experts warn this is a development that Australia needs to closely monitor. Sean Nichols reports.
Russian politics spilling onto the streets of Sydney. Dozens of Russian Australians demanding the release of jailed Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny. Their target is Russian President Vladimir Putin. There to challenge them is a group of Russian loyalists.
We're here with our President Vladimir Putin, supporting the President, supporting Vladimir Putin against this opposition scum.
They're led by Australian-born 31-year-old Sydney-sider Simeon Boykov. Boykov is head of a Russian nationalist group called the Australian Cossack Society. It's one of several pro-Putin groups establishing themselves in Australia.
The purpose of the Cossacks in Australia is to preserve Cossack traditions, culture, values, and also to promote pro-Russian sentiment. We have no problems of admitting that we are pro-Russian.
Simeon Boykov runs a newspaper called Russian Frontier, which provides a platform for his often extremist views, including denying Russia's involvement for the shooting down of MH17, which killed 38 Australians.
Putin has a lot of power in the Kremlin. The Russian government has a lot of power and has a very large armed forces. But they can't do certain things, which we can help them do.
He boasts about his group's freedom to spread their propaganda.
Australian laws are very, very relaxed. You know, I could never imagine doing this in other countries, what we're allowed to do here.
Former Russia intelligence analyst Kyle Wilson has told Four Corners that Vladimir Putin sees these types of groups as significant assets.
You can use the Russian diaspora, the Russian community, to seek to build your influence and then use that influence, 'tis to be hoped, to shift Australia's policies. Russia makes no bones about it.
Simeon Boykov and his fellow Cossacks say they will continue to defend their president against any criticism. Sean Nichols, ABC News.
New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has lashed out at the Australian government for cancelling the citizenship of a woman for allegedly joining the Islamic State group. The woman is a 25-year-old Melburnian who until last year was a dual citizen of Australia and New Zealand. Dylan Welch from ABC Investigations reports.
Arrested in Turkey, this woman, who lived in Melbourne for most of her life, is at the centre of a trans-Tasman feud.
New Zealand, frankly, is tired of having Australia export its problems.
Well, my job is Australia's interests. That's my job.
The spat was sparked by news that the woman, a New Zealand citizen who had been held in a Syrian detention camp after living under ISIS, had managed to smuggle herself into Turkey.
This is an individual that has been known to both New Zealand and Australian authorities for some time. They are someone who held dual citizenship as Australian and New Zealand.
Scott Morrison didn't back down from a decision to strip the woman's Australian citizenship last year.
It's my job as the Australian Prime Minister to put Australia's national security interests first. So I think all Australians would agree with that.
8 months ago, the woman and her 2 young children were smuggled out of the Al Hol detention camp in northeastern Syria, where she had lived since the fall of Islamic State with more than 60 other Australian women and children. The ABC can reveal the woman is 25-year-old Sahira Aden. With her are her 2 Syrian-born children, aged 2 and 5.
If the shoe were on the other foot, we would take responsibility. That would be the right thing to do, and I ask of Australia that they do the same.
We do not want to see terrorists who fought with terrorism organisations enjoying privileges of citizenship, which I think they forfeit, the second they gauge as an enemy of our country.
Turkish authorities say Aden and her children are expected to be deported to New Zealand once the Turkish legal process has ended. Dylan Welch, ABC News.
Auckland has emerged from a 3-day snap lockdown after cases of the UK COVID strain were detected in the city. Jordan Butler reports.
The highly infectious COVID-19 strain has reached the streets of New Zealand.
Genome sequencing of the 3 community COVID cases shows they are the UK variant of the virus. This is highly transmissible and a fast-moving strain, one that requires extra care in order to stamp it out, and that is exactly what our approach entails.
The infection of an Auckland couple and their daughter sent more than 1 million people into a 3-day snap lockdown over the weekend and also put an end to the quarantine-free travel between Australia and New Zealand. While authorities remain on high alert, there have been no new locally acquired cases detected.
No further cases in the community is an encouraging sign, but it's the days ahead that will be crucial as results from expanded testing across the Auckland region in the Waikato and Taranaki start coming through.
But how the family caught the highly contagious variant is still unknown.
A lot of contact tracing has been done around the family. People have been asked if they've been in any of the places where the family have been, indoor places, that they should be isolating and getting tested. And so hopefully from all of those that come back, we'll really understand more about how big this cluster might grow to be.
One possibility is the mother from the infected family contracted the virus at her catering company job, washing laundry that had come from an international flight. Meanwhile, the country has received its first batch of 60,000 vaccines, a welcome relief for authorities.
Particularly in light of the last period of time, it is good news that it is here earlier than previously predicted.
New Zealand has been praised internationally for its response to the pandemic after tough lockdown measures early on eliminated the virus. But only time will tell if this snap lockdown has been enough to stop this strain. Jordan Butler, ABC News.
Indian authorities are facing backlash after police arrested a climate activist accused of distributing misinformation. Disha Ravi was remanded in custody, sparking outrage on social media and among farmers' unions. Tyson Whelan reports.
An unprecedented attack on democracy. That's how the arrest of 22-year-old Disha Ravi was described by the Chief Minister of Delhi. Wake up, Delhi police, protesters shouted after Ravi was remanded in custody, accused of sedition and conspiracy after helping to create a widely shared toolkit detailing ways to protest against a new agriculture law. The document, which was later shared by Swedish activist Greta Thunberg, encouraged people to record a solidarity video or tweet the hashtags Stand With Farmers and Farmers Protest.
The main aim of the toolkit was to create misinformation and disaffection against the lawfully enacted government. The toolkit sought to artificially amplify the fake news through various tweets which they have created in the form of a tweet bank.
Farmers began protesting against the legislation in September last year, a law which takes away a government-mandated minimum price for goods and commodities sold at auction. Prime Minister Narendra Modi supports the reforms, saying the new rules will modernise the industry and give farmers more freedom to sell directly to buyers. But tensions continue to rise in the capital, where police issued arrest warrants for 2 more climate activists accused of working with Ms. Ravi on the protest toolkit.
I think people should have the right to access information and come to their own decisions without people providing such information being arrested.
Members of the main opposition party in India labelled the arrests as shocking and unwarranted harassment. A court ordered Ms. Ravi to remain in custody for 5 days as police searched through her phone, email and social media accounts. Tyson Whelan, ABC News.
And staying in India, the government's urging netizens to ditch US-based social media giant Twitter in favour of Coup, a new homegrown microblogging app. A spat between Narendra Modi's government and Twitter is fuelling the move, but also raising questions about free speech and censorship. Sean Manteso explains.
There's a new bird on the block. Coup, India's answer to Twitter, is a not-so-subtle rip-off of its more popular rival. And now India's government is trying to persuade the nation's 700 million netizens to migrate to the app. So why is Twitter falling out of favour? And why should we care? Twitter has become embroiled in a spat with India's government. After it refused to censor and remove content the government says was fueling protests related to a controversial new agriculture bill.
If you are operating in India, you damn well follow Indian laws. Simple.
Well, not that simple. In India's government was trying to have the accounts of journalists and even opposition MPs shut down. The government says Twitter is breaking the law. Twitter says the government is breaking its own laws. And democracy activists say this is just another example of how the government is using online censorship to stifle dissent.
Just for context, we've had a significant amount of internet shutdowns in India, the highest number of internet shutdowns in the world. Some of the longest internet shutdowns in the world, over 100 days in some places, have also been issued in India, and that is mass censorship.
Ministers from the ruling BJP party and their supporters are wasting no time in leveraging the dispute with Twitter to try and convince netizens to migrate to Ku. So what exactly is Ku? Ku is a microblogging app much like Twitter. It's now functioning in 5 languages and planning to introduce 12 more. Launched in March last year by a duo of well-known startup entrepreneurs. Now, Ku claims to have 3 million downloads and 1 million active users, but that's still significantly less than Twitter's 17 million users in India. Despite some glitches and privacy concerns, the app has managed to attract a slew of high-profile government ministers. #KuApp was the top Twitter trend in India last week, followed by #BanTwitter, in a sign of how quickly the tide might be turning. There are also reports the government will make announcements first via Ku rather than Twitter in the near future. At the moment, the app is largely populated by like-minded users, supporters of the ruling BJP party and its affiliations. But the app's co-founder has told the ABC he is committed to ensuring the platform is open to all. So, can it succeed?
Right? It takes a democracy to create a debate. It takes a debate for a platform to flourish. If Ku is going to be just right-wing focused and there's only one side on it, then I guess it will become an echo chamber and there'll be no one to fight.
Eyes are now turning to how Indians respond.
If you think about it, what makes Twitter work for many Indians is the fact that it's a global ecosystem, that we get voices from across the world. That frankly will be Ku's challenge, that are Indians going to come in only to hear other Indians, or do they want to engage in a global internet economy?
Thousands of people have taken to the streets of Barcelona demanding the release of Spanish rapper Pablo Hasél. The 32-year-old was imprisoned for insulting the monarchy and glorifying terrorism in his lyrics and tweets. But protesters say the prosecution is an assault on freedom of speech.
Protest has erupted on the streets of Barcelona. Freedom for Pablo Hasél, they chant, calling for the release of a local rapper arrested under Spain's 2015 public security laws. Demonstrators say it goes against freedom of speech, with some violently clashing with police to show their dismay. Pablo Hasél was sentenced to 9 months in jail in 2018 for insulting the monarchy and glorifying terrorism. He was supposed to surrender himself to police on Friday, but in a last-ditch effort to resist his arrest, he barricaded himself with his supporters in a university.
Either we have an overwhelming and organised response to these severe attacks from the state, or they will keep cutting our most fundamental rights and freedoms. We have to stop this.
After a tense standoff, police moved in.
The fight will never stop. We will win. They won't defeat us with their repression. Never.
Prior to his arrest, he doubled down on the words that sparked this fight, posting, "These are the tweets that are going to jail me in a few minutes or hours," and warning, "Tomorrow it can be you." Known for his far-left radical views, Hasel's tweets and lyrics included references to banned Basque separatist paramilitary group ETA, compared Spanish judges to Nazis, and called former King Juan Carlos a mafia boss. But his supporters believe he has the right to these opinions.
I think it's a right to express your opinion, either rapping, either singing, either dancing, either doing whatever you want, right?
The uproar from the case has led the government to announce it will change the law, but it's unknown if this will be enough to satisfy the growing anger. Jordan Butler, ABC News.
Israel is leading the way when it comes to the rollout of the coronavirus vaccine, with almost half its population having received their first dose. But a rise in misinformation has authorities concerned as demand for the vaccine begins to fall.
Inside Israel's vaccine misinformation war room. Like COVID-19, authorities work around the clock to stop the spread of a different kind, fake news. It's here where a team of cyber experts are trawling through hundreds of social media posts about the country's vaccine rollout, trying to stop false information at the source.
The moment they see a fake news, they transfer the information to the cyber department in the Ministry of Justice, and they transfer a request to the social media.
At medical centres, vials of the Pfizer vaccine sit idle as the country with the highest rate of inoculation sees a drop-off in demand.
I think that the fake news and the anti-vaccination groups have some effect, but it's a minor effect, and I wouldn't pay too much attention to them.
Almost 4 million Israelis have received at least one dose of coronavirus vaccine as the country looks to recover from more than 700,000 cases and 5,000 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. A recent study of 500,000 people who received both doses of the Pfizer vaccine found a 94% drop-off in symptomatic infections and 0 deaths recorded. But a surge in misinformation online has seen a drop-off in people coming forward for the vaccine, with about 20,000 fewer daily inoculations in February compared to the previous month. A cause for concern, according to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
The only thing that currently prevents the completion of this process is fake news and the superstitious and sometimes malicious beliefs that are planted among the public and on the internet. Don't believe them.
In ultra-Orthodox areas of the country, some rabbis have taken a more traditional approach to spreading anti-vaccine ideas, using posters called pashkavils, usually reserved for religious messages, to discourage worshippers from getting immunised. The Health Ministry announced on Sunday that museums, libraries and concert venues will reopen later this month, but only to those who have received the vaccine, in an effort to incentivise further uptake. Tyson Whelan, ABC News.
And that's it for the program. You can head to the ABC's World News page for all the latest international headlines and join us on the world's weeknights on the ABC News channel. I'm Yvonne Young. Thanks for watching and bye for now.